you can just kind of work this back. Be careful with this aluminum tube because this stuff, God damn it! Fucking moron! Okay, so considering I did almost the complete opposite of what I kind of gave you guys as a guide for the last video, if you noticed from the last video, the hard lines are different because after I got all this stuff done, I had the 3 lines coming out. I made the bends down, and then I made the bends to head this way to catch the fuel filter and then the return line that's going to run above it. And instead of bending, I took both of them over there and bent them at the same time, and instead of bending on the L, which is where I took the measurement from, I bent on the 0. So what that did is dropped it down almost an inch lower where it had to be. So just like I said not to do, or just like I tried to repeat in the last video, it can get frustrating. And as soon as I bent it and I walked over and I put it up, I realized it was too low. I knew exactly what I did, and I'd already bent the other piece too. So it was just time to toss them and start over. But luckily I didn't toss them. This one is a reused piece, and this is a reused piece. So I reused both of these. There was enough left over that I used 2 of the original pieces I already had, and what I'm going to do now is basically take you through the whole thing of making my 3rd piece, which it's already got the short radius 90, or the short radius 90, the short bend 90, the shortest bend you can do, and then getting a flaring tool while still getting it to work. And what I plan on doing with this is coming out, running straight over, brake on a 90, come out, and then brake on a 90 down to have it basically maybe a 1/4 inch off this frame rail right here. It's probably going to line right up with this guy, and then it will brake to the driver's side, come over the fuel filter. And then another thing that I realized I did, this is why you have to think a few steps ahead of what you're doing. What I did is I had a bulkhead fitting. This is a bulkhead fitting. So this is the fitting that lets you basically disconnect the line and then just tighten it back up. It's good. What I planned on doing was running a bulkhead somewhere over here, so that these 3 lines, if I ever need to take this fuel cell out, I can break one here, break one at the fuel filter, and then just take the vent tube off. The whole thing can come out, so you're not tied to lines that are here. Well, obviously if I'm running this line, I wanted to run it nice and give it like a nice 1/4 inch gap around the corner and everything. Well, if you look at this piece is way bigger than a 1/4 inch center line. Just the edge of the washer is a 1/2 inch. So what I did on the other piece, which is where I goofed again, is when I bent that, I bent it and kept it nice and close, and then I put the piece up here and I realized the bulkhead fitting cannot get that tight on this frame rail out here. So you've got to just plan your next move. Think about your next move. So this time I'm going to make this line come out, come up and over, come towards the front, down, run this rail, and then what I'm going to do is figure out about what the center line is. I'm going to run this bulkhead fitting off of here. I'll end up making a tab to hold this bulkhead, and basically make this line to this, figuring out how far I'm going to come off of here. It's going to be about a 1/4 inch off this, and then we'll just do some measuring and get that to work. So if you have a marker when you're doing this stuff, like a Sharpie's kind of good. It's not great like just a standard Sharpie. This is a fine point Sharpie. This is way better because with a Sharpie, when you put a line on it, you're going to get an 1/8 inch wide line. So with this, you get about, this thing's maybe a 32nd, maybe a 64th nice fine line you get on it, so you can get everything as close to where you want it. Another thing, small square, really handy to have. You can lay it, I laid this on the frame up here to square these lines, make sure they were perpendicular to the chassis before I started bending everything. And then it's always good to have a small rule, especially that ends, that's not like if you look at this guy, the end measurement is almost a 1/4 inch from the end of the actual rule itself. So what you can't do with that, you can do with this little one, to where if you need to butt this up against something and take a measurement, it's great. But for everything else, this one's alright. Tape measure's just kind of big and in the way. The only thing I don't like about this is if you don't have the right reflection on it, you can almost not see the marks. So you gotta kind of tilt it up, down, things like that to get it to work. So these are the 3 things: square, a rule or 2, even a tape measure will work. It's just a little, I don't like the hooks on the tape measure because the hooks get caught on stuff and they can pull your lines around, especially if you're doing this where I don't have it bolted down yet. Nothing super tight. So let's go ahead and start. First thing I want to do is find out the center line. Yeah, it looks like one of these moved. It's that one. Yep. So the center line, which is going to be your center to center on your pieces of tube. And with these, it looks like it's about, so you got about 5/8. So next what you want to do is you want to figure out from the center of this outlet, or inlet, whatever you want to call it, to the center of this, and then minus 5/8 from that, and that's basically going to be your bend for your next piece. This also makes it handy for making sure you have a good spot to measure from. So I'll measure this and then figure it out. One thing I forgot to mention is it helps if you have a gunner piece. It's basically just a straight shot that you put on fittings to raise it up. Obviously in this instance you can measure between the 2 holes on this to get it also, but these help sometimes with other stuff. But what you want to do is when you snug that down, you want to make sure it's level this way and level this way before you start measuring off it. So the measurement was 5 3/8. So you take the 5/8 off, it makes it 4 3/4. So what we're going to do is go mark our tube at 4 3/4 and make the first bend. Alright, tube's marked 4 3/4, and what I usually always do is I put a line on they call it the heel of a bend. The heel is on the outside, the throat is on the inside. So I put this, if you could see that black line right there, that's the heel on my bend, so I know that needs to face towards the rollers, or up away from the die itself. So remember, this is where we want the bend to land, so that's going to be our L mark. And also, when you snug everything up, just double check and make sure you line your 0 up, because this piece has a little bit of wiggle to it. So as long as you line that piece up on the 0 and then check your L, and this needs to come back just a hair. The next thing you want to check is you want to check and make sure that the piece facing up is perpendicular to your actual, to the top of basically the bend radius, or the bend plane. And again, that's where small square on the bolt head will do that. Pretty close there. Double check everything. And there's a 90. Now we'll go check it. And there you go. you can always tweak these things just a hair if they don't line up, because this aluminum tube is pretty soft. So now we're good with that. The next thing I need to do is figure out, bring this center line off the frame rail up, then add half the tube length, because then that will basically bend the tube down and have it brushing the side. And what I want to do is I want to have it about a 1/4 inch off, which if I would have marked the other tube on the bend, I could have just transferred the mark over, but the bend on that was actually landing on it. So actually I think with this, as long as this thing's good here, I can probably, so that's 7 alright, that looks to be 7 7/16. So what we'll do now is make a mark from the center of this tube, 7 7/16 out, and that will get bent on the L facing down. Alright, so we measured back 7 7/16. Pretty sure that's what it was. I got my mark denoting the top of the bend. So what I'm going to do is set this thing up and put it on the L again, because we're bending to a center line. We know where it's going to go, or we know where we want it to go. Right, same thing on this. You want to put something you can get a reference off of and make sure your piece is perpendicular and square and all that other good stuff. Double check everything. Now, it might take you a few tries to get used to bending a 90 on your bender, or you'll know if you have to pull your 0 mark just a hair to the other side of the 90 mark if you hit it dead on. I think with this one, it hits dead on pretty good, because if I can see right, when you put this in here and you snug this down, it's almost like it has a little bit of spring back built in, or not spring back, but overbend built into it. So this piece is just a hair crooked this way, so that when you make the bend, as soon as you land on the numbers and you get off it, the piece is pretty close. But like I said, with this skinny stuff, if you overbend it, no big deal. You can, I mean, if you severely overbend it, it's a big deal. But if you maybe go hair over, you can just kind of work this back. Be careful with this aluminum tube, because this stuff, God damn it! Fucking moron! Fuck! Alright, so I just did that on camera. I literally bent it the wrong way. So, I don't know why. I had my mark on it where it should have been. It should have rolled straight down, and for some odd reason, I don't know why I rolled it up. But another good thing is when you're doing this to write down your measurements, because once you have your measurements written down, if you need to make a new piece, you can just kind of throw it together real quick. Don't even go over and do anything. Just bend, make your marks, bend, 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 bend. Everything is good. So, let's try this again. Jeez. Good job. This might be a little more difficult to line up. Look back through it. Sweet, it's not even close. Alright, try that. That's pretty close. Alright. It's in the right way. that'll probably fit better. Now what I'm going to do on this next bend is I already have the elevation bend from where this needs to be to where I need my bend to come up, and it's 3 1/8. So what I'll do is I'll just go ahead and put my 3 1/8 mark on this, and I know which way I need to bend it, and then we can move on. Alright, 3 1/8 mark is on there. Double and triple check this. Make sure it's getting bent the right way, and it is. It's got to sit straight up. Pretty close right there. Alright, so see that? Yeah, it loses a little bit of tension if you take your hand off the. So what you need to do is once you get it all lined up, you put a little tension on it. Once it starts bending, it'll hold it. Alright, it looks right. Go over and test it out. I have to tweak a few of these bends a little bit. Alright, so for the last bend, what I'm just going to do is I laid it up here. It's pretty close to everything being lined up. And like I said, with this stuff, you can tweak this. Like if when you have your, not the 90 bends, but from this to this, if you look down it or put a square on it and see it's off, you can lay it on a flat table. Just make sure you grab as close to the table as you can and just give it a little push, and you can tweak it a few degrees here or there without completely messing anything up. So what I'm going to do is, I know that I want this bulkhead fitting 3/4 of an inch center line off the inside of this frame rail. That's what I'm going to build my bracket for. So all I've got to do with that is come out 3/4 of an inch and make a mark. That's what that L is good for, is that's where you want the bend to end, and that's where the bend is going to end on its center line. So now we'll go put the last one in it, I'll flare it, and go from there. Alright, we got our eyeball mark. Everything's good to go. This is the bend you don't want to screw up on, but you're still not out of the woods yet because the end isn't flared. And ultimately what you could do, flaring the end, is forget to put your tube nut or the other piece. I still haven't looked up the name for that damn thing. And there it is. But it can still be screwed up. You need to get the tube nut, the other piece, and put them on there and then flare it, and then we'll go test fit it. So, flare's on. I remembered to put everything on that needed to be on. Obviously she's sagging now because I don't have any mounts made or anything, and this guy is overbent just a hair. Just tweak that back. Bulkhead fitting will go in here. And once that's mounted, that'll hold everything in place, and then we can move on to running the lines up front. And that's it. So, yeah. Biggest thing, just pay attention to what you're doing. Triple check it every time you put it in that bender before you make that bend, and make sure you got that thing going the right way. Alright, till the next one.